What's up internet, Caleb with Board Time Things here. In this video I'm going to list my top 5 favorite shmups. You may be asking yourself, what is a shmup?
Isn't that what my Yiddish aunt called me when I dropped out of college?
No, that's a schmuck, which apparently you are. No, a shmup is the shortened version of shoot 'em up. More specifically, it's a scrolling shooter of sorts in which the player is constantly moving forward with tons of enemies to beat and projectiles to dodge. It all started with Galaxian back in 1979, and the genre really exploded in the arcade scene in the mid-80s. While the genre itself isn't as popular as it once was, there are still great modern shmups and remastered classics releasing to this day. Most of my memories of this style of game come from playing classic arcade titles like Galaga or Galaxian, a handful of Game Boy games like Robotech or Gradius, or the tons of Flash games that we played in school like Red Plane. The thing that appealed to me most about these games were that they were difficult but not impossible. Tons of trial and error were required, but once you learned the projectile patterns and enemy formations, they became much more manageable. Now let's get to it. These are my top 5 favorite shmups.
Disclaimer: these are Caleb's favorites and not necessarily good games. This is strictly his personal opinion, and sometimes his opinions are bad. Don't hold it against him.
Number 5, Strikers 1945. I always thought this was a sequel to the 1940X series of shmups by Capcom, but when doing research for this video, I found out that this is actually an original series by Sakio and has nothing to do with the 1940X series. Strikers 1945 and its sequels are actually the spiritual successor to the Aero Fighters series by Tecmo. When Aero Fighters lead designer Shin Nakamura left Tecmo to create his own games with like-minded people, he formed Sakio and developed the Strikers 1945 series. One of my favorite things about this game is that in every mission, this can be seen as a standard World War II style airplane game with excessive power-ups for your plane, but once you get to each stage's boss, it turns into a science fiction bullet hell. As with most of these games, the challenge is part of the appeal. There are harder games out there, but this one is still plenty challenging and super fun. If you want to give this one or its sequels a try, you can pick each of them up digitally on PC, Switch, PlayStation, or Xbox for $9.99. Number 4, Cuphead. Okay, I know what you're thinking already. Caleb, Cuphead isn't a shmup. Well, for the most part you're right, and why this game isn't higher on my list. The bulk of this game is a run-and-gun boss fighter, and a dang good one at that. However, there are a handful of shmup-style levels scattered throughout the game, and they are better than a lot of the shmups that are coming out today. You can tell with the tight controls, lovingly hand-drawn graphics, and kickin' jazz music that the game had tons of love poured into it. While this game's 1920s cartoon style make it charming and fun to look at, do not be deceived. This is a hard game. There's also an expansion called The Delicious Last Course that I have yet to play. The parry mechanic in this game helps set it apart from others, rewarding you for playing riskier. Any pink projectile can be parried, and doing so increases your super meter, which gives you momentary invincibility and deals a ton of damage if you can make it hit. If you haven't played Cuphead yet, you owe it to yourself. It's a labor of love from the developers, and it shows. Just listen to that music. The base game, while originally a Microsoft exclusive, is available on all modern consoles for $19.99 and can be added to your Tesla, which I know for a fact all of my viewers drive. Number 3, Robotech: The Macross Saga. For me, this one is a blast from the past. In my elementary school junior high years, I went through a mech phase, being obsessed with all things Gundam and Megas XLR. Side note, can we please get a reboot of this show? It was way ahead of its time and even had Bruce Campbell as one of the villains.
Groovy.
Now, back to Robotech. I missed the boat on the Robotech anime, but when I saw the cover art for this on Game Boy Advance, I knew I had to play it. It's a decent shmup and one of the first ones I ever played. It's fairly easier than most, but you can make the game easier or harder depending on which character you pick. What sets this one apart from other games of this style is the ability to transform your mech. Each one has a plane, mech, and hybrid setting with pros and cons for each. The plane mode is of course the fastest and easiest to maneuver, but takes damage when flying too close to the ground. The hybrid form is a little slower, but is tankier and doesn't take damage when flying low to the ground. And finally the mech, which, while cool, is in my opinion the worst way to play. You're grounded for the most part with little control while flying, but you can shoot in any direction, even backwards. If you want to try this one for yourself, there's an HD remaster on the Nintendo Switch for $9.99. But if you want to play this the same way I did as a nerdy preteen, you'll probably have to find a copy on eBay and have a Game Boy Advance or Retro console that can play it. In my brief research, it looks like it's being sold between 15 and 30, so it shouldn't set you back too much. Number 2, Jamestown. There was a brief period of time in college when I got my first gaming laptop that I was obsessed with modern pixel art games. Ask any of my friends and they'll tell you that I go through weird gaming phases often. Example of these types of games would be games like Broforce, Enter the Gungeon, Hammerwatch, and this one, Jamestown. This one I think my friend Daniel showed me at a LAN party, and I instantly fell in love. The art style, the weird colonial sci-fi setting, the tight controls, the bullet hell style gameplay, and the chaotic 4-player co-op made this an immediate go-to for a quick game or two amongst friends. However, I did play a lot of this solo to do a lot of the challenges and unlock all the ships. When I originally played this, there were only 4 ships, but picking this back up, they added 4 more as DLC, which I bought. There is a newer version of this game called Jamestown Plus with 2 new levels and remastered graphics, but the reviews are mixed on it, and based on the screenshots, it just doesn't appeal to me as much as this one. While the goal of this game is to shoot everything you can and beat the boss at the end of each stage, like every other game in this genre, what sets this one apart is the variety of ships and its weird setting. Each ship is unique and changes the way you play, making this game extremely replayable. Outside of that, each level has multiple difficulties that make mastering each one extremely satisfying. If you'd like to play this one, you can pick this version up on PC digitally for $9.99, and I cannot recommend it enough, especially if you have friends to play it with. Jamestown Plus is also on Switch, PS4, and Xbox for $17.99. Number 1. I'm gonna call it Ikaruga. Maybe I'm saying it right, maybe I'm not. I got this game on the GameCube back in high school and have fond memories of playing it co-op with my brother and taking turns with friends to see who could get the farthest. This game was made by a studio called Treasure, and they have a reputation for making really good, really difficult games. I was way better at games when I was in high school. Playing this game again as an adult was brutal. Basically every game I replayed for this list was brutal. Why do I do this to myself? I had to put this one in free play mode just to get footage for levels beyond the second. Anyways, this is one of the most unique shmups I've ever played and is the spiritual sequel to Radiant Silvergun, which was originally released on the Sega Saturn and is literally the most difficult game I've ever played. Ikaruga has this sort of yin and yang thing going on where there are light and dark enemies. Your ship can switch between light and dark. As the light ship you can do boosted damage to the dark enemies, and as the dark ship you do boosted damage to the light enemies. You can also absorb projectiles of the same color to charge up a powerful homing missile shot. This allows for strategic gameplay that rewards you for playing risky and absorbing those precious extra shots. While on normal difficulty, enemies of the same color will fire a few projectiles when defeated, rewarding you for taking them down without using their weakness. On easy, no projectiles are fired when taking down enemies, and on hard, every enemy fires shots at you when defeated. This is near impossible for me. Full disclosure, this game only has 5 levels, and I never made it past the 3rd. Regardless, this is still the best shmup I've ever played, and it deservedly takes the top spot in this list. And there you have it. These are my top 5 favorite shmups. I played a metric butt ton of games for research and footage for this list, so it's time for me to go outside and touch grass. While it is a dying genre, I'll always have a special place in my heart for this style of game. Do you have a favorite shmup? Maybe you hold a special place in your heart for a genre of games that aren't really being made anymore. Let me know in the comments below, or if there's anything you'd like to see me try. Until next time, Board Time Things, out.